No, we still have recording, but not from the teams, but from this classroom, the system from this classroom. Okay, so you still can see the recordings for every class. Okay, and today I'm going to talk about chapter 3. Okay, how do you feel after reading chapter 2? Or chapter 1 and chapter 2. After reading chapter 1 and chapter 2, how do you feel about the regression analysis? Huh? Somebody want to share your opinions? How do you feel? Cranking all these numbers or formulas or math? Especially when we talk about the chapter 2. There's a lot of formulas, and I'm talking about this ordinary least square, and I say that there's some formulas from beta 0 and beta 1. Yeah. Beta 0 and beta 1. And especially that if it extended to multiple regressions, then we have more x. So for example, if we have 2x, then the formulas for beta 0, beta 1, and beta 2 turn to pretty complicated, right? Which we didn't even want to see the formulas. Okay, so I think from your reading all this chapter 1 and chapter 2, maybe you are thinking that this course, okay, or this subject is more math-oriented and more number crankings, okay, and more formulas. But actually, it's not like that way. Okay, not exactly like that way. Okay, so chapter 3 is telling us practical, I mean, in the real world, how do all this regression analysis, goes? How do all this researchers to do the research using regression analysis? How do they proceed all the procedures, or is there something which we can follow, which kind of rule that when we do the research, then we have something to follow? Then we really can do a good, excellent, an excellent job when you're working with the regression analysis. Okay, so let's see in chapter 3, we do have some steps, okay, which is on our textbook on page 84, and I'll show some my PowerPoint. Okay. Okay. First of all, let me talk about what we will learn from chapter 3. Okay. The first section, I'm going to talk about those steps in applied regression analysis. When we say applied regression analysis, means that in the real world, how do they do the research, regression analysis? Is there any rules we can follow, okay? Or we can learn from those econometricians, okay? Then we're using one of the examples shows in the textbook to follow these steps. How we use one of the example, then using those steps and go step by step. Then how do we do it? Okay. Then there's another important concept from chapter 3 is called dummy variables. Okay. And I think the assignments next month due, okay, which I will ask all of you to collect the data. One of the variable is called gender, right? So it's either male or female. okay? And that will be what we call here dummy variables. Okay, the explanation for dummy variable is really different from the numerical variables, especially for those coefficients. How do you explain? How do you say the meaning of the coefficients? So it will be different when you explain the coefficient from the dummy variables or regular numerical variables. Okay, and then chapter 3, we do have another lab, number two. Okay, so in other words, soon we will have another assignment. Okay, all right. Then let me show these 6 steps first. Okay, what are they? Okay, and this is on our textbook, page 84. There are 6 steps to follow. The first step, and this one is go one by one. When we say step 1, step 2, step 3, means that we will go started from step 1 first, then second, then third, up to the 6th. Do not mix all these steps, okay? Then it will help us to do that in the standard like format. Then you will not miss anything when you do the research, okay? So the first one is review the literature and develop the theoretical model. So first of all, you need to read the subjects, the literature about the subjects you want to study. Okay, then then develop the theoretical model. Okay, all right. The second step will be specify the model. When we say specify the model, this word specify means you need to set up a model. Okay, if we set a model, what do we need for our model? You know, when you do the research, okay, what do you really, what's the purpose do you want to do is what you want to do the research, right? So, for example, this is the example we want to use. Okay, let me show the other one. Okay, this is the example we are going to use. Okay, so let's just start it for our example. Okay, then follow all the steps. Then I will go by all the steps and explain the details of them. Okay, so for example, so far, we wanted to help. There's a restaurant called Woody Restaurant, and this restaurant is a moderately priced and 24-hour family restaurant chain. Okay, and for example, you have been hired to determine the best location for the next Woody restaurant. In other words, they wanted to open another restaurant. Okay, then they hire you as an expert, then to decide which location is best to open a new restaurant. Okay, so if you learn the econometrician, if you learn this regression analysis, then can you build a model, regression model, to help this Woody restaurant to set up, to select a best location. Therefore, they can increase or their gross sales volume, then and also choose the important variable to explain the sales. Okay, so if this is an example. What's the purpose for doing this regression? You want to open choose the right location to help the sales of the restaurant, right? Okay, so in other words, what is the Y variables? So the purpose for research is your Y variables. Okay, remember we have X variables and Y variables in the regression model, right? So what is the Y variable here? Yes.
That would be the gross sales.
Gross sales, right? So gross sales will be the Y variable. Okay, so when we decide your research means we already decided the Y variables. Okay, so the Y, as long as we know the Y variables, then later we can decide it. How do I collect? What's the definition of my cells? Okay, there's many ways to define the cells, right? So how do I define my cells? But actually, you have to decide it why first. Okay, after you decided why, then you have the purpose, right? You have the purpose. What kind of purpose? You need to choose some other factors to know those other factors will affect the cells, right? Or have some relationship with the Y variable. Okay? So this is what we are saying that, I have to switch from different PPTs. So this is what we say, step 2. Okay, let me go back to the step 1. After you decided to find the best location for Woody's restaurant, then you need to go to the literature. What kind of literature?
So what we have to check if there's article already written on the subject, right?
Yeah. You need to look for those articles. It's already published. Okay, it's if in school you need to find all these scholarly literatures, okay, instead of those just regular journals or something. You need to find the scholar, academic journals to look for or to read all these articles. Okay, all right. So then you're going to develop the theoretical model, right? So in other words, you know what is the why. Then based on the literature review, you can set up the theoretical model to explain the sales of the restaurant. Okay? All right? So the second one is, since we have the theoretical model, then we need to specify our models. So select the independent variable and functional form. What is the independent variables? It's the X variables, right? After you decided the study, you have the Y variable only. Then after reading all these literatures, then you find the X variables. Okay? All right? Then, since this is the model means mathematical equation, right? So in mathematical equation, we need to know the functional form. There's many kinds of functional form. Although we are not really say something about it, we are going to cover the problems of functional form in chapter 7 this semester. Okay? But, functional form is also the important job for specifying the models. Okay, let me just briefly explain it, the functional form. Okay, in math, okay, this is what you more familiar in the math model. When I say y equal to, okay, let me just use regular math equations, okay? A plus B x, maybe I have this, two variables, x1 and x2. Okay, this is what we call the functional form, one of the functional form. Okay, then I may also use y equal to a plus b1 plus c, x1 plus c x2, and maybe x2 square. Okay? There's two different functional forms. Okay, this is what's this function look like? Maybe I just choose one variable. Well, maybe it's easier, okay? Just one variable. Or this one, it can be this way. There's no ink. I have the square here. Okay, this is x1. What's the difference between these two equations?
There's one more variable in the second.
Yeah, sure. But this is called different functional form. Okay, if I say y is a plus b x2, is this the same as this one? Is this, I mean, this person, 1, 2, 3, okay? Is first one, and the first equation, is there any, I mean, the functional form of equation 1 is the same as functional form of third equation? Yes. Yes, but different variables. One is x1, the other one is x2. You see the difference? But they do have same functional form. Okay, how about this? This one is different from this one. Okay? What's the difference? I do have another variable, but actually it's not another variable. But you can consider another variable. But this form is extended from the first power into the second power. Okay? So the functional form of the first one and the second one are different, but they do have same x1 variables. All right? So the chart of the first equation is something like linear relationship between x1 and y, right? Okay? How about this one? You have the square.
Exponential one.
According to the math, or what we learn maybe in high school, okay, what kind of chart of this one? Or what kind of lines? It's not exponential, but it's a little bit, where if you have the square terms in math, this is what we call parabola. You know, do you know what is parabola? This one. This one is something like this or this. Depends on the coefficient. Is positive or negative. Okay? And this one is something like this. So this is what we call parabola. And this is the mouth. There's a two mouth, right? There's upward open mouth. This is downward open mouth. Then sometimes we say this is U shape. This one is called U shape. And whether it is like this way or this way, it really depends on the size of B1 and C. So according to the math. Okay, so what I'm saying, the functional form is in terms of equation 1 and equation 2. And equation 1 and equation 2 is like select the independent variables. Because there are two different independent variables. One is called x1, the other one is called x2. You see the difference? So for step 2, specify model. Okay, so for this examples, you may choose this one, or this one, or this one. Which one is the best? Then how do we decide the functional form? Is according the literature review about the theoretical relationship between x and y. Okay? Right? But so far, most of the time, since this is more complicated, so we'll start with just the first power only instead of third or some other functional form. But we will talk about that in chapter 7 in more details about those different functional forms, which is pretty popular in economics. When you learn undergraduate economics, I think you already see those kind of functional form. All right? So you see the difference here? So most of the time, when we're talking about the functional form, we are talking about just all these variables. Either this is just simple linear regression, or this is a multiple, but maybe not in the square terms, is another variable called x2. And all in terms of the first power. Okay? All right. So this is what we call step 2. Okay, so what do we do from our examples? How do you think the woodies? So we know that the y variable is the cells. Okay? Then x variables, how do you think? What will determine the sales of a restaurant? What can you think of? Any factors?
Whether the people go there or not, so whether it's well placed, and then how long and how much people are going to pay, like how long they're going to stay and how much they're going to pay. Because if they stay long in a restaurant, other people we will think, oh, there's people that it's a good restaurant, and then they will themselves go to the restaurant, right? And if they like
I think
restaurant, they might
he needs to use this one to have recording, right? I'm sorry. Can you say it from beginning? Because we need to do the recording.
I say there is different factors. Whether the restaurant is accessible, it's easy to go there, right? So people go. Then how long people stay there. So is the time in the restaurant agreeable? So do you want to stay there more? Which can also bring people even more, right?
Yeah.
The more there are people, the more we will think that restaurant gives tasty food, right? And then how much food people are going to buy, right?
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
for instance, that could be impacted by how far away the restaurant is from the city center. Well, how tasty is the food on an
Yeah.
objective basis? And for instance, is there a very busy road just near the restaurant or not? Because if there is, then it's very noisy. You don't want to stay there, right? So you won't stay long in the restaurant. So there's
Yeah.
a lot of different factors. Are the waiters agreeable, sympathetic, and professionals? That kind of stuff. There's a lot of things.
Yeah, yeah. You really say, Evan, you really say a lot of factors. Can you define or can you specifically, define what you say as a variable in terms of, since there are several. But
Is there a busy road? So maybe we can do like 0, 1, and 2. 0, there is no busy road. So for the busy road example, we could take 0, 1, and 2. 0, no busy road, which is a very good thing. 1, there's a road but not that busy, but that might annoy some of our clients. And 2, there's a very busy road, and that's a problem. Right.
So you just choose one, what we just call the dummy variables, to explain the sales of the restaurant. And how do we call that name, the name of the variables?
Well,
This is what
it's
we
an
decide, right?
environmental-
Or read from the articles about all these factors, okay?
I think to summarize from what he said.
Yeah, okay, sure. Good. Summarize what?
Yeah, we can just put it into 3 variables if
Yeah.
you listen to his explanation.
Yeah,
The first one, we can say we analyze the competitors, the environment we are to operate, other restaurants like substitute goods. So we can classify that as our substitute or competitors. Then the second one he mentioned.
competitions.
Yes.
Competitors.
Yes. The second one he
Okay.
mentioned about the environment, whether to go there is easy or not. We can put that as the location. Then he also mentioned about the city factor. We can also put that as the population.
Yeah.
So we can have this thing classified into 3 variables.
Yeah, okay. If you read the books, okay, and actually, let us see what kind of variables they are choosing, okay? Look at your textbook, okay, on chapter 93. Well, by the way, I also like to say something about, okay, this is the independent variable, according to the literature, okay? And they're choosing 3 independent variables. The first one is called competition, okay? And the definition, for every variables, you need to define that variable clearly in order to collect the data. If you don't have any definite definitions, it's hard to collect the data, okay? So the first one will be the competition, okay? And the definition for this competition is the number of direct market competitors within a 2-mile radius of the Woody's location. Means that around this 2 miles radius of the restaurant, okay, and how many of those competitors? Okay, so if you have more competition, you have more competitors, then how does that affect your sales? If you have more, then the sales go down, okay? So the relationship with the n variables, if we denote this competition as the n, then the coefficient of the n will be negative. Okay? So by reading the literatures, then you will also expect the relationship between this x variables to the y. Okay, the directions. Then the second one is the population. Then how many people live around the restaurant? So the definition will be the number of people living within 3 miles radius. Okay, here we really have the definite, clearly, very specific distance. Okay, this is 2 miles radius. For this population is 3 mile radius. So maybe they can thinking about, if you live within 3 miles, it's easy for the people to go to the restaurant. Okay, so within 3 miles radius of Woody's location. So how many people live around the neighborhood of the restaurant? So this is the second x variables. The third one will be the income. Okay, so this is the average household income of the population measured in variable P. Okay, since we need to have more money in order to go to the restaurant, right? So usually we know that if you eat at home is cheaper, but if you go to the restaurant, it's more expensive because you need other people to serve you, cook for you. Then if you eat at home, you have to do it all by yourself. You need to cook, you need to wash the dishes. Okay, so this is the three they think is important. Okay, but we know that this is not the only three. Okay, maybe we can thinking about even more. Okay, but remember, when we do the research, we're not going to prove. The model is not going to prove the theory. Okay, we just collect the data in order to show the relationship of what we like to know. Okay, so all this x variables should be, very important, and maybe it's just a kind of important or substitute of the realities. Okay, so try to thinking about as precise as possible, but not exactly. It cannot be exactly. Okay, so remember that we're not really, prove the theory. Okay, working with this regression analysis does not prove the theory. It's just only to explain the relationship between x and y. And also it's not to do the causality test or to say something about the causality between x and y. Just show the relationship only. Okay? Therefore, when we go to the step 3, okay, we need to hypothesize the expected signs of the coefficient. So in our examples, and the first one is negative relationship with the y. How about this one? What about the P? The more people, the more chance to go to the restaurant, right? So this is positive relationship. Then how about this one? The higher income, the more chance to go to the restaurant. So this is negative. We expect. This is the negative, and this 2, the coefficient of them is positive. So this is what we say hypothesize the expected sign of the coefficient. And this one, okay, after you do this one, so when you review the literature, when you specify the model, when you expected the signs of their relationship, do you have already collected the data? Not yet. Not yet. So far, all this is all in your mind. Okay, you really didn't collect the data yet. That's why we say that we need to spend more times on thinking the relationship. All this is in, is really in your mind. Okay, and this thinking is more important than just collecting the data. Without the thinking, you are not able to get the correct, you are not able to collect the correct data. Okay, the more times you spend it here, the more chance you will get the correct data. Okay? So step 4 will be collect the data and inspect and clean the data. After you collect the data, you need to inspect the data and also clean the data if there's something wrong with it. Okay? So really, so we have 6 steps, but for the first 4 are all the preparations, right? All the preparations before we do really estimate. So after you have all up to this stage, then you will really get to the computers, then estimate, then say something about your output. So what you say, you evaluate, is based on what you expect. It's really different from, you see the result, then something from the result, that's wrong. You see what I'm saying here? Please do not just, immediately jump into the computers and estimate the regression and see the result, then explain something about it. Now that's really opposite way. For evaluating the equation, for correctly evaluate the equation is based on what? Based on the third step. The third step. Based on your hypothesized expected signs of the coefficient. It's not based on the result you have. Okay, so I like to use this 6th step to really set up your mind into the correct thinking logic. Okay, this is a correct way to think how to do the regression analysis. So when you do the our exercise number 2, that's due next week. Okay, now I just give you some a feeling to collect the data, but before that, and since we already know this equations, we know the relationship between the y and x, right? So it seems that we already done the first 3 step. You have to thinking about this literature review, but we already, we already specify the models. In other words, we have already reviewed the literature, and we already have the x variables. Okay, then you need to hypothesize the relationship between this x and y. Okay, then you collect the data, then do the estimation and evaluate, and just say something about the result. Just a little bit, like practices the procedures of this 6 step. So when you, after you learn this 6 step, every time you do your research, follow these steps, then let them be the habit of you do the research. Then when you, after 2 years, when you need to do your own thesis, then, just immediately you have the logic. Okay, you have the rule to follow. You won't be able to, you won't be like anybody else that, just something out of your mind. You don't know what to do, and you don't know how to get to start it. Okay? All right. And so, and let's go back to, there's something, I need to explain more in detail of each step, which show that something which I have left it, I didn't say, which I need to do some more explanation, okay? So this is I say that the best data analysts don't start with the data, but theory, okay? And it's smart to review the scholarly literature before doing anything else, okay? Anything else? Okay, and when you started to look the literature, be sure that you'll find that where the earlier literatures left off. So what does that mean? This means that there's something which really not yet explored that much. Okay, you need to find this area in order to extend all the study or all the studies so far. Then you can extend a little bit step to do this research. Okay, so any academic paper on an empirical topic should begin with summary of extent and quality of previous research. Means that if you're doing the literature review, all these academic scholars will do the summarize of the extent and quality of this research so far, okay, in this topic. Okay, so it's good for you to read the summaries. Okay, with the summaries, you know that what this subject has done. Okay, and what are left off. Okay, then yes.
May I ask you how much pages for the thesis school is expected?
Well, I think it really depends on your own advisors, and sometimes if you're working with empirical study, maybe, like 40, 30 or 40, because all this, less than 50. I think so. Okay, less than 50 in theoretical, empirical research. But if you do something like qualitative research, maybe you have something need to do the explanation, and maybe, more pages to, it really depends on your subject, and also the advisors, they ask. Okay, usually if you do the empirical study, since you need to show all these tables, all this estimation result, and do the explanations, I think it's not much pages as just like those literatures, Usually they are published within 20 pages. But the 20 pages is condensed from this original work. So if yours is like less than 50 pages, maybe, if you publish it in articles and will condense to about 20 pages, something like that. Okay. All right. Let's see. Okay, sometimes if your subjects is really new, okay, it's really new. For example, there are many like studies like what kind of study is pretty new subject? ESG. Okay. ESG. Does anybody knows ESG? What is it? Yeah, environment, social, government. Yeah, in accounting especially. Okay. Yeah, there's a lot of new topic. If you like to, since we don't want to do many those other researchers has done, so. Like those brand new topic, maybe you don't have any literature review or very few literature review. In that case, the authors say, try to transfer theory from a similar topic to yours. Okay? Or contact someone who works in this field. Okay? So in other case, if it is like this way, maybe you need to do those qualitative research study, okay, instead of just empirical, because you don't have any current, available data available to work with. Okay, anything else? Okay, that's it. Then if you specify the model, we say that the more attention paid to econometrician theory at the beginning of the project, the more satisfying the regression result are likely to be. If you, thinking about more about the theory, and after you do this thorough thinking, then your regression results are likely to be follow with your expectation. Okay. One thing is, if you expect it should be the positive sign, then end up with the result is totally the opposite sign. Then what do you do? Okay, it's a really hard job. Okay, all right, and anything else here? Okay, this is what we say that after selecting the dependent variable, the specification of model involves choosing three components. One is independent variables and how they should be measured. How they should be measured, or the functional form. This means mathematical form of the variable I just explained it, and the properties of the stochastic error terms. Actually, we don't think about this one. Okay, we're just thinking about that's just regular stochastic. So usually we're thinking about the first one and the second one. Okay, this is too advanced. This is maybe for PhD students, not for you. Okay, all right. Let's stop here just a while. And let's take a break.